the network news would go from 6:30 through to 7:15, and then the final 15 minutes would be the regional show. So it was town and around. We did, for the lower half of the North Island, and the top half of the South Island was Today Tonight. Covered the biggest area of all of them, and I think the one that got the most press was top half up here with John Hawkesby and Jude Bailey. But it was really, really cool experience because I was hosting the show, so I had to read the news every night, but at the same time I was allowed to go out with a crew and do some stories, do some little feature stories, if there's any visiting, pop stars or anything like rock stars, you could go out and create a story. So it was a hell of a good experience, And the first days I started was all still film. So we're going back a wee way, sadly. I think it was Paddy O'Donnell and Howard Morrison did a series in the 70s, and then Bill McCarthy, he was part of it as well. I'm not sure whether that was late 70s or 80s, and then it sort of went into recess, if you like. And then Ron Pledger, who was the producer, he came up and got it revived, basically. So from about 1986 through to 90, we did these series of Top Town. And it was, talk about, another era in time when you think of the money that was spent on it and the fact that there were no OSH regulations. There was a full publicity and marketing crew went along with a marquee and wined and dined the local dignitaries. And we were on tour. It was like being on a rock tour, We would do Saturday. So we would move in on, the crew would move in on a Wednesday or Thursday and set up and all the games and all that sort of stuff. We'd record the show on Saturday. And then that same outside broadcast van would go to a neighbouring town or city and do It's in the Bag. And that was with John Hawkesby and I think Hilary Timmins and people like that. So they got a lot out of a weekend's work. They got two, top rating shows. I always remember one example was Ian Jones, Carmo, the All Black, who had a great career as an All Black. Before he was even heard of, he was in Top Town, and he was really competitive, and he'd be climbing up the rope net to get to the top of a particular game or something, and there'd be someone beside him, woman or man, and he'd shove them off, to get the advantage. So they took it seriously. They did 4 years of that, and the first 2 years had people like Neil Roberts, whose idea it was, and Tim Shadbolt, and I think Sue Kedgley, and I think Kerry Smith might have been involved. They did 2 years, and then there was a reshuffle, and I took over from Neil and became the host of it, and we had Phil Kogan, who of course has gone on to marvellous things, 9 Emmy Awards at The Amazing Race, etc. He came in, and he was just a young buck in those days with his blonde puffed up hair and stuff. He was a great guy, and I think Juliet Monaghan, who went on to acting and directing, and so yeah, it was a sort of more junior team, if you like. Whenever the boat came into port, I would get the interview with Peter Blake and talk about what great adventures he'd had. And it was in the very early stages of the little cameras, the handy cameras. So we set up a handy camera on the back of the boat so that we could capture some of those wonderful images that we get now of the waves crashing over. Sadly, it had to be switched on. It wasn't satellite driven or anything. So he would come in and say, "Oh God, we had the most amazing storm, and or we saw whales, incredible whales off the Queensland coast. It was fantastic." And I'd say, "Okay, well, give me the tape." And he said, "Oh, I actually forgot to turn it on." So we actually didn't get anything on it, So you can imagine how frustrating that was. These days, of course, it's all off on a satellite, so it's fantastic footage. It was based on a show that was called Superdogs, which was in the UK. It was I think a BBC series, but it was very long-winded and slow and tedious, and we just basically zapped it up. And of course, the BBC show was non-commercial, so we had commercial breaks to factor in and all sorts of things. So it evolved through that, and we did 110 shows, I think it was. It was fantastic. Run from about 1903 to the last we did was 2005. Yeah, well, Jim Moore's input was pivotal. He was, he was the essence of the show, I think, with his great script. They described the show as adult acceptable but kid driven. So it was really a kid show, but the adults would sit down with the family and would watch it and enjoy it. And of course, Jim's great commentary, he had all this little subtle innuendo in there, and the adults enjoyed it as much as the kids. And he had this ability to get inside the dog's head, One line he had about a golden retriever going through the water, trying to retrieve something, and it was so slow, you know, getting through the water. And Jim said he's like a friendly crocodile. Any moment now he's likely to fall asleep, you know, and it just sort of summed it up perfectly. And it was great, you know, his commentaries, and the way he did them was great too, because he did them sort of as live, and he used to, you know, write them longhand, and he'd put things in like, you know, pauses and things like that, and then he'd put cough and, or, you know, little manure or something. He'd actually put them in the script. So that it actually sounded live, and we would just do it almost in one take, so that, you know, it sounded like it was just off the pat basically, rather than pre-recorded and all scripted and, you know, slick, you know. And that's, I think, also added to the charm of the program. And, you know, it was sold all over the world, that program. Wonderdogs was sold, went right through Europe and Africa on Animal Planet. They took every series they could get of it, you know. Amazing, really. You know, they just loved it. Can't go wrong with dogs. One was The Guide to Life, was just about how they train a guide dog. Then Kohi's one was about a specific dog who was trained that we had as a puppy, and then we gave her the initial puppy walking treatment where she was part of the family, and you could take her to the supermarket and all that sort of stuff. And then she went off to be trained, and then we followed that training process, and then we went to Invercargill where she was matched up with Stuart, a guy called Stuart down there in Invercargill, who had her for 11 years, and then she came back to live with us towards the end of her life. Sadly, it was only for 6 or 8 weeks, and she had some illness that we didn't realise, and she died, which was really sad. But we did a documentary on all that too. So, and then there was another one, a young woman who was blind, had a guide dog, and she banged her head. She was playing with the guide dog one day, and she banged her head, and her sight was partially restored. Not particularly well, but enough. It was better, you know. And so this became a miraculous story. And she was, the next minute she gets a call from ABC Good Morning America, and they want her to come to New York to tell her story. And of course I thought, well, I'll go too. So we got the camera and off we went, and we filmed this amazing story, got right on the set of Good Morning America and talked to Diane Sawyer, got the interview, all this sort of stuff. It was amazing. So, you know, you have some great fun with, it's been a career where lots of highlights and lots of fun things have happened, and experiences that you would not normally get. It was a one-off series, and I think possibly because, I don't know, in that sort of 8 to 10 programs, it probably just ran its course, you know. And basically it was just a celebrity show where celebrities came on and we tested their spelling. And it was quite fun. We had a young kid from the States who came out as a special guest, Samir, and he was the script spelling bee is the famous spelling bee, and he'd got second or third in it, and he was good, and he sat in the background, and he was sort of like he would give a spelling, and the celebrity, if they were struggling with a particular word, would he would give them what he considered the right spelling, and then they could either say, well, okay, yeah, I agree with Samir, or not, you know. Invariably he was right, and those who didn't agree with him, you know, found out the hard way. But no, it was fun. It was great to meet all the different people, from the politicians to the sports people, although we didn't have too many sports people. Perhaps they weren't considered great spellers, I don't know. The celebrities, of course, and in fact, you speak of Jim Mora won it in the end. He got the big prize. Very talented chap, our Jim. And no, it was good value. And then, you know, and people like Raybon Khan and the comedian. I remember one time I had, for some reason, had a difficulty with the word Gloucestershire. And I kept adding an extra shire. I don't know why this was. I mean, I know what Gloucestershire, you know. And I'd say Gloucestershire. And of course, that was like a red rag to a bull to Raybon Khan. He just was relentless, bearing on me. Now, Gloucestershire, you know, and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. I feel, you know, really fortunate that I've had a really good long run, you know. In fact, both my brother and I feel the same. And, you know, that we've been lucky in that regard, that I don't know whether we've just been steered in the right direction, or just moved in the right direction. I think the big secret as well is being a bit versatile, you know. To presenting as a career is, you know, can be very short-lived. But to be able to present and do a bit of directing and voicing and writing particularly then you're covering a lot of bases there, and that means that you generally can find something that you can create and do. But now the industry is I think it's so much harder, obviously, with the number of channels available. Obviously, each of those channels need material, which is a good thing. But getting the budget to do stuff is really tricky and really hard. But you know, it's very exciting at the same time. There's, you know, for people out there to, and with the phones and the fact that you can video on your phone now, and the fact you can, you know, everyone can be a camera person or a photojournalist, as it were, is a pretty exciting thing as well. Everyone's going to have a crack at it, you know.